It is truly the country's loss that they will only be in post for a few weeks. Now, the Prime Minister must be feeling demop happy since he was pushed out of office. Finally, he can throw off the shackles, say what he really thinks, and forget about following the rules. So, does he agree? Does he agree it's time to scrap the absurd non-dom status that allows the super-rich to dodge tax in this country?
Prime Minister, well, I thank you very much, and it's perfectly true that I'm grateful for the ability to speak my mind. I never really lost, Mr. Speaker, but what I'm focusing on is continuing the government of the country.
Picture this. Keir Starmer, sitting in number 10, probably enjoying a nice cup of sensible tea, thinking he has finally got rid of Boris Johnson and all the chaos that came with him. Then suddenly, like a blonde-haired political grenade with a Latin quote ready to deploy, Boris comes roaring back into the headlines with warnings of machine gun fire and political bloodbaths. And the best part? He might actually be onto something. Because whispers around Westminster suggest Labour MPs are plotting the mother of all U-turns on Brexit, and Starmer is caught between a rock, a hard place, and approximately 7 million angry voters who still remember what they voted for in 2016. Quick favour, if you are loving this political theatre, smash that subscribe button and hit the notifications bell. Over 94% of viewers have not yet. It is free, takes a second, and keeps us bringing you these bombshells. Cheers if you did. Now back to Boris versus Starmer, round 2. Right, let us dive into what has got Boris Johnson sufficiently riled up to put pen to paper in the Daily Mail. And when Boris writes in the Daily Mail, you know things are getting serious, or at least seriously entertaining. He has come out swinging with a warning that would make any politician nervous. If Labour MPs try to reverse Brexit, they will be walking into a hail of machine gun fire. Now, that is not your standard political metaphor. That is Boris going full Churchill, painting a picture of political carnage that would make even the most ambitious Remainer think twice. But here's where it gets properly juicy. Boris is not just throwing around dramatic military metaphors for fun. He is responding to actual, real movements within the Labour Party. According to Boris, and frankly according to anyone paying attention, a growing number of Labour MPs want Starmer gone. And why? Because the party has sunk to a record low of 14% approval. 14%. That is not a political party. That is a rounding error. That is fewer people than believe in Big Fit or think pineapple belongs on pizza. It is catastrophically, historically bad. Now, these unhappy Labour MPs apparently want Starmer to commit to what Boris calls a massive U-turn by transforming Labour into the pro-European Union party. They want to openly campaign for closer ties with Brussels, potentially even rejoining the customs union or the single market, or eventually the whole European Union project. It is a bold strategy. You have to give them that. It is also potentially political suicide, but we will get to that. The problem these rebellious MPs face, and this is where it becomes absolutely delicious, is that they do not believe Starmer is the right person to lead a rejoin campaign. Why? Well, partly because of the last election, Starmer swore blind that he would not try to reverse Brexit. He promised voters. He looked them in the eye, metaphorically speaking, and said Labour had moved on from Brexit. They had accepted the referendum result. They were a Brexit-respecting party now. Except apparently that was all nonsense, and now some Labour MPs want to do exactly what Starmer promised they would not do, but they do not trust Starmer to do it because he already lied about not wanting to do it. Follow that logic? Neither can the voters. Boris, being Boris, does not mince words about what would happen if Labour attempts this political maneuver. He writes, if Labour MPs try to reverse Brexit, they will be walking into a hail of machine gun fire, and if that is a fight they want, bring it on. But they should heed my warning before things get bloody. That is not just a warning. That is Boris essentially saying, I dare you. He is goading them into it because he knows, and they should know, that trying to reverse Brexit would be political catastrophe for Labour. But hold on, because this is not just theoretical posturing. Things are already happening. This very week, the House of Commons voted to begin talks with the European Union about creating a new customs union with the United Kingdom. Let that sink in. Parliament has voted to start discussions that could begin the process of reversing a fundamental part of Brexit. This is not some fringe proposal from backbenchers. This actually happened. The vote came after David Lammy, Labour's Deputy Prime Minister, said the UK would be better off if it rejoined the customs union, which we left as part of exiting the European Union. Now, Lammy has fallen for being enthusiastically pro-European Union, so this is not entirely surprising. But for the Deputy Prime Minister to openly say Britain should rejoin the customs union is significant. That is not a slip of the tongue. That is a deliberate political statement about the direction Labour wants to take the country. Here is where the numbers get interesting, and by interesting I mean politically explosive. Most Labour MPs abstained in the Commons vote. They neither voted for nor against beginning talks about a customs union. Classic political fence-sitting. They want to keep their options open, avoid angering either side, and basically pretend they were in the bathroom when the vote happened. But 13 Labour MPs actually voted in favour of holding talks with the European Union, while only 3 voted against. A total of 100 MPs voted in favour, including Liberal Democrat, Green, and Scottish National Party MPs. That is a significant chunk of Parliament openly supporting moves toward closer European Union ties. Boris, naturally, has thoughts about all this. He points out that Starmer can try to cover up the damage Labour is doing to Britain by blaming it on the 2016 referendum vote. It is a convenient scapegoat, Brexit. Whenever something goes wrong, just blame Brexit. Economy struggling? Brexit. National Health Service in crisis? Brexit. It is raining? Probably Brexit somehow. Boris argues this is fundamentally dishonest because Labour's current problems have nothing to do with Brexit and everything to do with their own policy failures. He highlights what he considers Labour's genuine failures: discredited promises, unnecessary tax rises, many charges of lying, and Wes Streeting's failure to fix the NHS despite all his bold promises. These are not Brexit-related problems. These are self-inflicted wounds from a government that has consistently overpromised and underdelivered. Blaming Brexit for these failures is like crashing your car because you are a terrible driver and then blaming the road. Now, Boris being Boris, he cannot resist pointing out that the post-Brexit apocalypse predicted by Remainers never actually materialized. Remember all those dire warnings? The economy would collapse immediately. Unemployment would skyrocket. Britain would become an irrelevant backwater. We would be begging to rejoin within months. None of that happened. Boris highlights that the UK has grown faster than Germany and several other EU countries. That is a fact that Remainers tend to gloss over rather quickly. Of course, Brexit has not been an unqualified success either. There have been genuine challenges, disruptions to trade, labour shortages in certain sectors, and complications that nobody really predicted or prepared for. But the point Boris is making is that Britain has not collapsed. We are still here, still trading, still growing, and in some metrics actually outperforming European Union countries that everyone insisted were so much better off than we would be. Boris then pivots to what he thinks Labour should be doing instead of plotting Brexit reversals. He suggests the UK should focus on attracting global investors rather than raising taxes and hammering wealth creators so hard that they leave the country. It is a classic conservative argument, but it is not without merit. Labour has indeed raised taxes significantly, particularly on businesses and higher earners. The national insurance rises hitting employers have been particularly controversial, and there is evidence that some wealthy individuals and businesses are considering leaving the UK or have already left. The question is whether you think that matters. If you believe wealthy people and big businesses should pay more tax to fund public services, then Labour's approach makes sense. If you believe that driving away wealth creators ultimately hurts everyone because they take their investment, jobs, and tax revenue with them, then Boris has a point. It is one of those fundamental philosophical divides in politics where both sides have reasonable arguments and neither can definitively prove they are right. Then Boris delivers what might be his most cutting criticism of all. He slams Labour's decision to immediately cancel the Rwanda policy, that controversial Conservative plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing. Labour denounced it as immoral, expensive, and unworkable. They scrapped it on day one of taking office. Very principled stance. That, except, as Boris points out, that enacted shock when tens of thousands of migrants continued crossing the channel in small boats. This is where Boris's criticism stings because it touches on a genuine Labour vulnerability. They cancelled the Rwanda scheme without having any alternative deterrent in place. They essentially sent a signal that the UK was open for business again to people smugglers. Now, whether the Rwanda scheme would have worked is debatable. It never actually got properly tested. But Labour's approach of cancelling it whilst having no plan B has left them looking naive and unprepared. The small boat crossings have continued, and Labour has no credible answer beyond vague promises about going after criminal gangs, which sounds great but is incredibly difficult to achieve in practice. So let us zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. What is really happening is a fundamental battle for the soul of the Labour Party and, by extension, for Britain's future relationship with Europe. There are clearly Labour MPs who never accepted Brexit, who have spent every day since June 2016 trying to figure out how to reverse it. They see the current political chaos, Labour's dismal polling, and Starmer's weakness as an opportunity. If they can force a leadership change and install someone committed to rejoining, they might finally get what they have wanted all along. But here is a problem with that strategy, and it is a massive problem. Brexit was decided by referendum. 17.4 million people voted to leave the European Union. That is more people than have ever voted for anything in British history. Those people did not vote leave because they misunderstood the question or were tricked or were stupid. They voted leave because they wanted to leave. And most of them still feel that way. Polling consistently shows that while some people regret Brexit, a significant majority do not want to go through trauma of rejoining. If Labour tries to reverse Brexit without another referendum, they will face accusations of betraying democracy. If they try to reverse Brexit with another referendum, they risk losing that referendum and looking stupid. Either way, Boris is right that they will be walking into political machine gun fire. The red wall seats that Labour needs to win elections are full of voters who strongly supported Brexit. Alienate them, and Labour's electoral coalition collapses. Starmer knows this, which is why he has been trying to have it both ways. He wants closer European Union ties, better trading relationships, more cooperation on issues like security and climate change. But he does not want to openly call for rejoining because he knows that is electoral poison. So he is stuck trying to edge closer to Brussels whilst pretending he is not, which satisfies nobody.